a pleasure to have you here today so that we can share with you the Water Services Entities Bill Information Campaign, which we will be launching at the start of next week. And we thought that we'd start off this session with you today just providing an outline of actually what the campaign is about and what we're hoping to achieve from it. So I'm sure everybody in the room is well aware of the process that's been in progress to date around the Three Waters reform. And we are now at the point in time where the first bill, the Water Services Entities Bill, has been introduced to Parliament, and we can start engaging in the next step or the next stage of the process, which is the select committee process. And we have decided as a region, as a group of councils, that we really feel we need to take the opportunity at the moment to share with our communities the information that they deserve and that they need in order for them to participate in the select committee process. So it really is about sharing information. There's a lot of information to share. It's quite complex in terms of what the bill will cover for these new water entities that are looking to be established. And we know that there's a high level of interest in the community, but potentially not a high level of understanding. And this is the first opportunity as local councils that we've actually been able to provide that information to the community. To date, it's obviously a central government process, and to date it has been led by central government, and so it's been really their role to provide the information. However, we feel that what they have provided has been inadequate and will not enable our communities to engage fully in the process if they wish to. So therefore we've set up a dedicated website which contains quite a high level of detail around the proposed bill, and we will be over the next 2.5 months providing information through that forum alongside another of other platforms such as print, radio, social media, etc. And really the ultimate objective is to empower our communities to have their voice and to actually have some input. Finally, because this is the first opportunity they've actually been given to have any input, for them to provide feedback via the select committee process. So in a nutshell, that's sort of a broad summary of what the information campaign's about and what we're hoping to achieve. And I'll pass across it to Mayor Sandra and then perhaps Mayor Alex to have a brief word as well.
Oh, kia ora koutou katoa, ngā mahi noi. Thank you, Mayor Kirsten and Mayor Alex. This is all a Mayors Together. This is a regional approach. This is how we want to ensure that our community have their democratic right to have their say in something as significant as a fundamental change in terms of how their water is going to be delivered to them in the future. So last year we went out and consulted with our community and let them know what the reform meant for them, and this is a continuation of how they can have their say on the reform. This is very, really important that our community understands what it means for them when they have a broken water pipe or they have a leak, a connection to their house. What all the basic information means for them, how they're going to, who they're going to pay, when will they pay their bill, who will they pay it to, what do the entities look like, how many councils will be in those entities, and what the reform actually means. It's for our community, this whole thing. This is not, we've had our, we took a very credible model to the government as a region. The only region in New Zealand. We showed strong leadership in doing this. We have stayed together on this. We know that as a region we could deliver Three Waters ourselves, and we worked 3 years on that proposal. The government are continuing along the path with this legislation, and for us that means making sure our community is well understood and having their say in this process of the Select Committee.
Alex?
Hi, kia ora koutou. Thank you for joining us today, and I'm actually in the rohi on the whenua of Ngāti Kere in Porongaho, so thank you for joining us through the whole breadth of Hawke's Bay, so welcome to you all. The issue for me is that Three Waters service delivery is vital to our environmental outcomes, our social outcomes and our economic outcomes in the Hawke's Bay region. And the reform that's proposed touches everybody, households, businesses, industry, iwi, marae, hapu, everybody. And on top of that, it's a complex system change. This is not just one piece of legislation, this is a whole system of how we view and operate our water systems for the whole country of Aotearoa, New Zealand. And so it is vital that now there is the space for every person in our Hawke's Bay region and the country to find the information that's relevant to them and participate in the parliamentary process, which is part of the decision making on whether to make this big system change for New Zealand. So it is only right that we, as leaders in our communities, are there to help provide the information and encourage and facilitate and be part of our communities and our households and our businesses having their say. And because of that complexity of the system change, it feels like the right thing for us to do to be translating that into what it means for someone who's living or working or operating a business in Hawke's Bay, so that they can have a say which is grounded in the facts and the information that's relevant to them. And that's the role that we're taking and the purpose of this joint campaign from the Hawke's Bay region to ensure that our people have the information and the ability to influence the outcomes that will affect their lives and their businesses, as well as our environment.
Happy to move on and take any questions.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, you say this isn't about drumming up opposition, but just a few days ago you published an article in Hawke's Bay Today, they're talking to a little four of you, saying we don't want this, we don't like it, so it's kind of giving people an idea of what to say in their submissions, isn't it, that they don't like it, you're trying to drum up opposition?
I think we've been quite consistent in our messaging the whole way through, that as individuals and mayors of our region, we are not in favour of what's being proposed, and that was reflected in that talking point, but we're not denying that, but we're also not going to be running a 10-week campaign now, which is around offering our views. It will be purely factual, it will be information-based, and it won't be our opinions being put forward.
So what about, do you still want the regional solution, or is that
Absolutely.
You do?
Yes, and that is quite clear. It is a credible solution. It is the only regional model. It is a model that works well for everyone, and the government actually applauded us when we took that model to them, and we have worked with the government because we know reform is necessary. We know our councils in Wairoa and Central Hawke's Bay cannot afford $70 million wastewater treatment plant. We know we've got to protect and look after our environment better than we have, and we know after the Havelock North water crisis that we need to do something. So that is why reform is absolutely critical and crucial for our community. So that is why the regional model we understood was the best for our people. It means that we can keep our assets where they have been purchased. And in Hastings' case, $82 million have been purchased in safe drinking water assets. So, that's what's really important to our community, is actually understanding what this means for them, how will that asset transfer happen, and just what this model will look like. And that is why we went to the government and we presented our proposal to them for Hawke's Bay.
So it's not off the table, you still ideally want that to happen?
We would love that to happen, and absolutely love that to happen.
Anna Hawke said in a recent press release that Hastings District Council was one of the councils that did not join the anti-Three Waters splinter group.
Yes.
When you made collective statements with the other mayors, were you speaking on your own behalf or on behalf of the entire council?
On behalf, so our council considered that very, very carefully, whether to be part of the splinter group or not, and our council were committed to working on a proposal that was best for the region. and the best for our people of Hastings. And that was very, very clear, and it was strong. We took a vote, it was a strong majority that they wanted to work with the government to make sure that our regional proposal would be considered, because it was a very credible proposal.
So do you consider this to be working with the government, this campaign?
Yes, well, it's just putting the facts out. It's the government's reform, it's not our region's council's reform, it's the government reform. We want our community to understand what that means for them.
So you're the 4 councils that got us into this mess. So why should the public give you any credibility in terms of running a objective public information campaign on this?
So fundamentally, we knew that the regulations in New Zealand were too low. Havelock North had bores that were consented bores. So we knew that reform had to happen. We needed new regulations, and Te Mata Arawai has been set up, and we really support the new regulations, because all councils in New Zealand are going to have to meet these new regulations. But it comes back to affordability, and how can all councils in New Zealand afford to meet the new regulations? We need reform. We need a different way and a different process to be able to deliver the 3 waters. And that's why we got busy straight after the Havelock North water crisis, after the government inquiry, and said, how could we do this ourselves? And that's when we all came together as a region to look at a leadership model and look at a model that was going to suit our region. So, but that's the next steps are, the government is heading down this pathway. How we move forward is entirely over to the legislation of the Crown.
If you were pleased with the trajectory this was on, would you be running this campaign?
It would, from my perspective, it would depend on the level of information that was being shared by central government. If I had confidence that they were providing what our community needed to be informed and to engage in this, then I don't believe that we would be taking this step either way, whether we were happy or unhappy. But fundamentally, for me at the moment, I feel that there is just a complete lack of understanding with our community, exactly how significant this is. This is the most significant change. It's a generational change within local government, and we would be being irresponsible if we were not taking this step to ensure that our communities had a full understanding of what the impact will be on them.
But the government's consulting right now. They're going out to public submissions. They're doing a select committee.
This is a moment in time. This is a moment in time that shows why the partnership between central government and local government is so vital for the outcomes for our communities.
Right.
Because in our view, it is impossible for the government to truly explain all the details of how these reforms will impact at a household and business level in our communities. They don't have the tools and the expertise to explain it at the granular level where we are. And in addition to that, we have the second reason is that for the first time, Hawke's Bay has had consistent leadership from councils and from the mayoralties of our councils that have fronted issues about Three Waters infrastructure head on. And so we have all collectively acknowledged the underinvestment of the past and have stood up and have led forward both in investment and in creative thinking and design of how to get a better structure on the table. And Hawke's Bay has had that collective commitment, that front footing from us all right from the get-go. And so this is another example of where the partnership and the complementary nature of central government and local government has to be valued.
Absolutely. We had a meeting with all the mayors and Minister Mahuta recently, and we asked about the government communication campaign on the Three Waters, and she said very loud and clear that she's hoping that we will all support and also make sure the community understands this and have their say, so that they couldn't do it all on their own. So that was a clear direction from that meeting with the mayors that local government needs to help.
Well, some of your drinking water and your water in general is still not meeting standards, so why should the community trust you instead of the government to do things?
So you're talking about Hastings,
I'm
Tom?
talking, Hastings, Central Hawke's Bay in particular, yeah.
Oh, I'll start. Next year, when we finished our Safe Drinking Water campaign and rolling out everything, all our new infrastructure, it'll be this time next year we will have completed the $82 million of new safe drinking water infrastructure, And so we've got another year to go. As you can see out the window here, major, huge water storage tanks been invested in, water pipes been finished off. We've got the last part of the journey, and then we're going to have Waiaraha, which will tell the story of how the water comes from our mountains to our taps, and that's what we're doing here.
Anna Hawke has said that she's supporting a national headquarters for the Three Waters based out of Hastings. What is the position of you and the rest of the councillors, I guess, on that kind of proposal? Would that be part of the submission you'd make to Parliament?
Well, we want the best for the region. So, you know, if we're going to have 21 councils across Entity C, which is what we've been told, we want a regional approach. And we would say, Wellington, the Crown, why wouldn't we put this in our region? And we are leaders in this. We're the only region that has taken a model to the government to look after our three waters. This headquarters does not need to be in Wellington. Why couldn't it be here in Hawke's Bay?
And if I could just go back to Tom's question for a moment. We know what our infrastructure requirements are. We have got plans in place already. Napier City Council has got 404 million in our current long-term plan. The government modelling included 1/3 of the investment for Napier. If we end up lumped in with 21 other councils, one of them being Wellington, where do you think we're going to sit in the priorities? Do they understand what we need? No. How are they going to prioritise Central Hawke's Bay, Wairoa, Hastings or Napier against Wellington, the Chatham Islands, Nelson? It comes down to fundamentally, we've been working on this for years. We've got solid plans in place and we're best prepared to give our community what they need.
So your comments just reinforce the question of how can we possibly take you all as being credible in delivering an objective public information campaign about these complex issues?
I think, Tom, you yourself have said that for the first time as a region, we've got councils that are collectively acknowledging that there's been issues in the past and are now working to correct those.
But you clearly are doing this because, let's cut to the chase here, you're doing this because you're unhappy with the direction of travel. This is a Hail Mary pass to try to stir up enough local, noise and furor to get a deal. Oh, man, we need to, change direction at the national level here. It's not going to happen. So what's your KPIs out of spending $130,000 on this? $139,000, I think it is?
Having an engaged, informed community that chooses to participate in the process.
As you interpret the issues to them.
We will be providing the information in an unbiased way for them to then interpret and make up their own minds. They will all know collectively, our communities will already know our opinions. We get dozens of emails a day from people about this issue. So they know that already and we accept that, but this campaign is not about influencing them. It is about providing them with the information that they need.
Change is always frightening for people, and people need to understand what that change means for them. And so that's what this campaign's about. It's about what this means for them and how their waters will be delivered for them.
And is central government aware of the campaign, or have you shared details of the campaign to them?
Well, we've been asked by central government, by the Minister, to help with the communication campaign on what the Three Waters reform model looks like. And
so are they aware?
We haven't shared anything with them formally at this stage, no.
I understand that Mayor Craig Little and Wairoa District Council have suspended payment of their local government New Zealand fees out of protest for their non-binding agreement with the Three Waters. Is that something that the rest of the council have done or are considering doing?
We have had a discussion, but at this stage have decided not to go down that path.
Absolutely not, because actually right now local government needs to be united in about how we have a sustainable system for looking after our Three Waters infrastructure. And actually the process we're having to engage in is one that is being led by central government and that we need to be united in how we're working to get the gains and the changes to that local government needs for their communities to be happy with whatever changes on the table.
And central government has already rejected the model.
Yes.
How do you see the model coming to fruition now? Is that by your persistent campaigning or people submit it?
Look,
Yeah, I think from my perspective, the reality is that it's unlikely that our model will be considered, and we actually now need to focus on this final stage of the implementation of the bill, which is the select committee process. In an ideal world, we would continue advocating for our Hawke's Bay model because we all believe in it and we all believe it's the best for our communities. But the reality is we actually have to set that to the side for the moment because it's not an option based on what central government is doing. So we need to continue to engage with central government in the process that they've put in place.
and I think the select committee process is going to, this is the democracy that we have in Aotearoa. We ask our community what they think, and we hope that the select committee process will allow the government to hear the views of our community, and that's why we're asking them to have their say, because that's what's most important here.
The government has held out, I think for this region, about 91 billion in, whatever they call it, better off funding.
Yes.
Are your 4 councils applying for any of that money?
We've received written confirmation now that by applying for that funding, it won't inhibit our ability to continue to exercise our democratic right in terms of vocalising our ongoing concerns with the reform. And we've also had assurances around the resourcing that they will be expecting us to provide that have satisfied our council. So yes, we will be applying for the funding because we've had those assurances.
So that's all councils in New Zealand. All mayors have been given that direction from the government.
So are you all applying?
Yeah, we'll be applying. Yeah, we're making sure that we have done right through. In fact, as a region, we got $50 million from the Crown that we divided up amongst everybody, all councils, to invest in water infrastructure.
Why would we turn it down? Why would we turn it down when we can utilise it and we're still, being enabled to continue voicing our concerns? But I'm sure our communities would be quite upset if we turned it down when we've had assurances around the way that we can carry on engaging in the process.
So,
We are quite clear that for many, many years, local government has been undertaking unfunded mandates in the translation of government activity and regulations into our communities. And so are pretty clear that any funding that is going to come to local government for the benefit of communities is funding that is expected because of the activities that we've taken up until now, and the opportunity to change the dial on what and how local government is operating in our communities for best impact for them. And that is the approach that we're taking from Central Hawke's Bay and assessing where the best impact for outcomes would be from investing further into our community.
Kia ora, Karen.
Kia ora.
So you've said that you're kind of putting the regional Three Waters model to the side for now while you do this campaign. So what will you guys be fighting for in your collective and individual submissions to Parliament? Is that still incorporated in there?
It will still be the model that we have taken to the government, which is our regional model.
So hasn't
Yes.
changed?
Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed for us.
So if the regional model isn't likely to go ahead, what is the outcome you want?
Well, just that our community has their say in the government's reform.
And again, speaking for Napier City Council individually, because we yet to work on our collective submission, but our submission will be continuing to outline what our concerns are as a council with regards to the bill itself that is being discussed. So we'll be going into those details, and our concerns haven't changed in terms of local voice representation, asset ownership, and there's a theme throughout. I would say 85% of the councils in the country who are still dissatisfied with the model that's been put forward, and without speaking on councils around the country's behalf, I suspect those themes will continue through into the submissions and the select committee process.
So there will be a collective regional submission, we've all agreed on that, and there'll also be individual submissions from all councils. And we did this last year on the reform, so we'll be clearly using the same submission and taking our same approach. Nothing has changed for us.
What's Mayor Craig's position on this?
Thanks for that. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's been said before. So basically, around the submission process, I think it's the first time that the government's actually given us a chance to really tell them what we think. It's going to be a big test on this government because, as we know, she's been predetermined from the start, and there's been no consultation with our community whatsoever. So, yeah, we're not happy up in Waira, and I don't think I've spoken to anybody in Waira that supports the Three Waters reforms and it's how it is at the moment. So yeah, we've got a bit to go. So it'll be interesting how the government, takes on. They haven't taken anything on board up to now, so it'll be really interesting. And of course, the saviour is, as long as National get in, they've said that they will reverse it all. So that's what we can only hope. And polls are a magical thing in government. If they keep watching the polls go down, it might change their mind a little bit. I don't know. So yeah, we're not happy.
You called it a load of sewage in the paper the other day. Do you stand by your comments?
Of course I do. They haven't answered our questions in Waira. It's been generic answers, and we need specific answers, not just an answer that fits all. They just haven't promised to come up to Waira on numerous occasions, and that's the minister right down to DIA officials. They haven't come up to Waira. They tell you what you want to hear. And so it's been really disappointing. So yes, I have to stick by those statements.
Kia ora koutou. I would like to offer continuing my support for the announcement of our joint communications campaign, and it's really important that our communities now have their voice in this parliamentary process. And I just have to give my apologies. I now need to leave for another appointment, but thank you all for coming today.
Kia ora, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
Ngā mihi.
If I could go back to Mayor Little. Mayor Little, you've been mayor for 9 years up there and 3 years beyond that on the council. Over those 12 years, how many tons of sewage would you say you've pumped into the Wairau River?
Not very much in the region, and please don't call it sewage. Quite often our overflows are treated wastewater, but yes, previously there has been, but I'll keep banging on. Funding is required, not a whole new take a sledgehammer to crack a nut. So, and the first tranche of money we got from the DIA was about 18 mil for Wairau. We have done an incredible amount of work that a small community like Wairau couldn't be able to afford in their wildest dreams. So we've now put generators on the pump station, so when we get a storm event and power goes out, we can continue pumping the sewage away or wastewater. So, money's needed, there's no doubt about it, but that's not the reason to do a massive reform.
Mayor Little, are your LG and Z fees still suspended, or are you
On hold.
on hold?
Mayor Little, the government say that they actually do a consultation now with the submissions and going to the select committee. That's what they're saying about them doing consultation. So what do you think about that?
Well, if I did consultation like that in Wairau, I'd probably run out of town. Generally, consultation means to us, we go out to the community, we tell them what we're planning or proposing, and then you can submit to us. They're just doing it from Wellington, and I'm afraid they have not taken the communities on board, and that is not how they expect local government to do their consultation, or our consultation.
Can I just add that, 3 years ago, our region's mayors realised that we needed reform. We needed Three Waters reform. We couldn't manage the investment that was required ourselves with our ratepayer base. So what we want now is to get the best outcome for our region. And that best outcome needs to be a model that is going to work for us. So we agreed that we need reform. We know that our small councils can't invest. We know that there needs to be an aggregated model for Hawke's Bay, just like the government model is, where everybody puts in and contributes. And we do this across many, many areas in Hawke's Bay. We do it in civil defence emergency management. We do it in roading. We don't separate our roading out, we look at roading as a region. And this is another option, an opportunity for us to work as Hawke's Bay and say what is the best for our region. And so that's why we'll continue on with the path and say, government, we have an option. Now the government might listen to the city committee, and if they get enough information from the community to say, we don't like your model, we don't want to be part of 21 councils, then, you know, they might revisit this. But we need reform, and that is what's most important for us as a region. It's too difficult for us to manage the infrastructure. Hawke's Bay is leading the way. In the last year, we are the highest performing region in Aotearoa. And that is based on our primary sector. And that is based on our construction industry and the investment that's coming into our region. So if we're going to be able to invest in growth, then we need to have some support from government funding around the three waters, because three waters are critical to the well-being, as Mayor Alex said, the well-being of our community, well-being of our industry, well-being of our iwi, and we need to have a model that is going to work for us. So this is about telling the community about the government reform model, and this is what this education, this whole communication plan is about today.
So, Ms. Hunter, you basically said that, you know, the more opposition they get, they might turn their backs and change their mind. That's not what you said, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. They might see that a whole lot of other regions in New Zealand are saying the same thing, that their best model would be for them to actually come up with their own regional model, just as Hawke's Bay. I've met with the mayors on Wednesday in Auckland. We talked about all the three waters. We talked about the opportunities of how we could do this differently. We've been working with LGNZ to find models that is going to work for Aotearoa, because this is clearly, as Mayor Kirsten said, is affecting, you know, everybody in the same way. We've got to get this right. This has to be what is going to be, you know, right for future generations. Not just right for us who sit here today and try and do the best for our community. We have to do the best, we have to put our best foot forward, and that's what we'll be doing in our submission process to the city committee.
Local government is divided on this issue.
There's
Not divided.
a small number of councils, and I think you'll find they're the councils that have got the most significant infrastructure issues, and there's about 7 or 8 of them that are supporting the reforms, but the remainder of the 60 to 61 councils around the country have all got the similar ongoing concerns.
So I just like to jump on what Mayor Hazelby said from Hastings. We need reform, but we need common sense as well, and that's what we haven't got. I was just talking to the Mayor yesterday from the Portakey. They're in the same watershed as Gisborne, yet they're chucked in the other entity. Then we go down to Wellington and we sit across the top of the Cook, or across the Cook Strait. That's not common sense. So, you know, the whole thing, and how that's happened, who would know? So that's what we should have talked about first before they even decided on the 4 entities. A bit of common sense. That hasn't happened.
Anything else anyone would like to ask us about? So
I guess just, I think, to sum up in terms of, because essentially we were here today about the information campaign, and I completely agree with everything that Sandra and Craig has said in terms of how we as individuals and as councils feel about the reform, and what we will be continuing to do as we engage in this process, which will be very much to support and push the Hawke's Bay model and continue to voice our concerns. I just want to provide some assurance that that is not the objective of this campaign. We're not using this campaign to try and get our communities to agree with us and to necessarily oppose. We simply want to give them the information that they need so that they understand how it will impact the water coming out of their taps, how it will impact their ability to pick up their phone and speak to somebody about their water, they can do that at the moment. They can ring me, their mayor. There's no way in an entity that contains 21 councils that they're going to be able to pick up the phone and talk to a person that actually cares about what's happening with their water. So we just want to make it really, really clear and try and simplify it as much as possible so that a person from Hastings, Napier, CHB or Wairoa can really understand what it means for them and then use that information, interpret it in the way they want to, and make a submission and engage if that's what they choose to do.